Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. So if you have noticed our name, we are traveling homesteaders, and I wanted to kind of explain, I guess, a little bit of why we have that name. So normally I know most homesteaders, like, that is their whole lives, is that they homestead, which is great. I think that's great. It's definitely the vast majority of our lives. But one reason why we homestead is because we love to travel so much. And we love to travel, we love like new cultures and all of that stuff. But our favorite part is always the food. And so we have sort of discovered the best way for us to be able to afford to do that is to do as much homemaking and homesteading as possible, growing our own food, because also that gives us just the best quality that we can get. And like I said, we really like food in this house. So one of the things that we really love to do when we're traveling is discovering like new foods that we didn't really try or have access to, or maybe what we did have before was not as good as the original, I will say. And so we definitely really love to bring any of that home with us, and then we kind of homestead it up. So I wanted to show you guys a few things that we have discovered that we really, really love in our travels, and kind of explain how we homestead those things up now, so that we are getting like a better quality and giving us much more like a closer representation of what we actually had when we were out in those places in the world. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and subscribe down below. It helps us out a lot if you guys would like, and make any comments. I would love to know what kind of videos you guys would like to see from us. That would be super helpful. But otherwise, here's some recipes of some things that we have discovered in our travels that our family really loves to eat. The first thing that I'm going to work on are our gyros. This is definitely something that we really, really, really love having as a family. When we were in Greece, we fell in love with the gyros and the souvlaki, specifically the chicken ones. And so we have really just made it a habit of making this as often as we can. When we were growing cucumbers in our garden last year, we ended up growing a ton and being able to shred and freeze them shredded. And this is perfect for making tzatziki because you want to drain your cucumbers, and when they freeze, that water separates from the vegetable and it makes it super, super easy to strain. So we will just let a bag of shredded cucumbers from our garden thaw out, and then I will do a quick strain on it, and then you get this like pulpy stuff. This is what you want. You want it to be fairly dry. Then to that, I'm going to add some garlic. Of course, you can use, if you have garlic from your garden or minced fresh garlic, use that. But we don't have any garlic from our garden right now, so we're sticking with this from Sam's Club, which I'm totally fine with. So I like to add about 2 cloves worth for this amount of tzatziki. And then I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons worth, maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons worth of lemon juice, and some salt and pepper to that. And then next I have a bag of dill. This was also from our garden. I literally just pull it out of the garden and stuck it in a Ziploc bag. And then I just like to cut it up with kitchen shears. It's definitely the easiest way to deal with that. You can also just pull it apart. But just frozen like this, it works perfect in this recipe. So I have a good couple of tablespoons probably worth of dill. When we were in Greece, we really discovered that they don't usually put tzatziki on the gyros. Sometimes they do, some places they did. But for the most part, and we went to several, we were in Athens, and we went to Santorini, and we went to Naxos, which was our favorite island. And in all of them, every single restaurant that we went to offered a flatbread or
some kind of a grilled flatbread and tzatziki as a side, and we ordered it everywhere that we went. We could not get enough of this stuff. And then anytime that it was an option to get it put on gyros, we did that. And then we always dipped our souvlaki in it too, which was delicious. And then the last thing that I'm adding here is some Greek yogurt. So this is just plain Greek yogurt. And I'm adding this entire container to that. I will say I'm making this earlier in the day because it tastes best after it has had a chance for all of those flavors to kind of marry together. So I put it in the refrigerator, just back in this Chobani container because it fits it just fine. And we just pull it out for dinner a few hours later, and it's just perfect. It's cool, it's creamy, it's amazing with a grilled flatbread, a nice warm flatbread, or a gyro, which is how we eat it usually. Once I get going on the tzatziki and I have that in the refrigerator, then it's time to get going on my flatbread. So I'm starting out here with 2 cups of nice warm water, and then I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of yeast. And then 2 tablespoons of sugar on top of that yeast. Flatbread is probably the bread that we make the most often in our house. I don't have to turn the oven on, so especially in the summer, this is a staple for our family because I'm able to cook it just on the stovetop, or I could even cook it on the grill if I wanted to, and that would be fine. And it's not going to heat our whole house up, but we're still getting a nice homemade bread product, which is really nice. So on top of the yeast and the flour, on top of the yeast and the sugar and water, I'm going to put 6 cups of all-purpose flour. I've also used einkorn for this. That works great too. And then a tablespoon of salt. And then I'm going to turn my mixer on and kind of start mixing all of that together. And once I get all of that mixed together fairly well, I'm going to put in probably 5 to 6 tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to let that knead for about 6 minutes on like a medium speed. Once it's pulling away from the sides and it looks really nice and pillowy, that's when you're done kneading it, and you can pull that off and set that aside and let it double in size. Once your dough has doubled in size, it is time to roll it out. So this amount of dough is going to end up making 12 good sized flatbreads for our family for Euro night. I also use these for like chicken Caesar wraps, and then we also really like them just with butter or with honey. It works for so many different things. So I'm going to cut this into 12 portions, as fairly equal as I can get them. It's not that serious. And I'm going to go ahead and help myself out for later and turn these into a ball. It's just going to make it rolling it into a circle a lot easier if I'm starting out with a circle. Once I have them all rolled out, I am going to flatten it down with my hand and roll it as fairly thin as possible. And then I'm going to stick that on a hot griddle on my stovetop. You'll know that the first side is done when that top part starts to kind of bubble up. And then you just flip it and pull it off and stick another one on. It's super simple. So while I was doing the flatbread, my daughter here was working on the chicken part. So you can use chicken thighs if you like the dark meat. We like the white meat in our house. So we are just cutting this into chunks. You can see here like about the size that the smaller size that they end up getting cut into. And then to that, we are going to add some Greek seasoning. I like the Cavenders. I have tried making my own several times. I always go back to the Cavenders because it's really, really tasty. And then from there, I'm going to take my hot skillet, and I'm gonna add some olive oil to it. So this is olive oil that we actually picked up while we were in Greece. It's a lemon olive oil. You can make lemon olive oil by just soaking lemon peels in olive oil for a little bit. This adds like a really nice little, I don't know, something to it. So I really like it, but obviously you can just use plain olive oil too. We have done that numerous times because, as you can see, this is a very tiny bottle, so it would not work for every time we made this. But I'm adding a good amount to the bottom of my pan because I want to get a good saute on this chicken. So once that oil is nice and hot, I'm gonna put my chicken in, and then I'm gonna cover it so that it cooks all the way through, and then I'll worry about browning the outside. Once we get to this point where the chicken is cooked all the way through, but there's clearly still moisture in the pan and it's clearly not browned, then I'm gonna leave the lid off of it and let the moisture evaporate, and that's gonna give us a nice crusty brown on the outside of our chicken, and that's exactly what we want. So whenever I make gyros, I tend to not really make anything else. When we were in Greece, everywhere that we went and got gyros, they put French fries on them. So maybe that's something I'll add to it eventually, but for right now, we do not do that. But I always just pull out the tzatziki that we made, lettuce, and tomatoes, and the chicken. And honestly, that's really all we need for this meal. It is really quick. Once you get the flatbread done, it's really quick to pull everything else together. That chicken cooks pretty fast because it's in the small chunks, and then it's just chopping up some vegetables. In the summer especially, we will have the lettuce that we grow ourselves, the tomatoes that we grow ourselves. Obviously, we make the bread ourselves. We make the tzatziki as much as we can ourselves from things that we have from our garden. And we end up with something that is so tasty, and it just really fully reminds us of being on the islands there, and we love it so much. So this is what that tzatziki ends up looking like, the flatbread, and man, when you put this together, it's just my favorite. So the next thing that I am going to work on, this is the next day, are some baguettes. So when we were in Paris, my girls and I ended up taking a bread making class from a baker there, and we had such a good time. We learned so much from it, and these baguettes are one of the things that we were able to bring the recipe home directly from that baker. So we were super excited about that. So I'm going to start off with 1.5 cups of warm water from the tap, and then to that I'm going to add a tablespoon of yeast and a tablespoon of sugar. Now I like to refer to this as hybrid because it's a hybrid bread. You see what I did there? And so you also are going to add sourdough starter to this. So it can be fed, it can be discard, either one works, because really what you're doing is you're getting the consistency in a rise, and a fairly quick rise, out of the yeast, but you're getting more of the flavor from the sourdough. It does have a yeasty flavor to it as well, but it is by far the favorite bread that we make in our house to this day, and definitely something that I am so thankful that we were able to get, because every baguette that we have had from any like bakery or anything here just does not compare to the ones that we would walk around the streets of Paris eating. And this is by far the closest, most authentic baguette flavor that we have found. It especially helps if you use like a kamut or an einkorn. I'm using all-purpose flour here, but we discovered when we were in Paris that they mostly do not use what we consider just all-purpose flour. They mostly use kamut or einkorn in their bakeries there. So if you can get your hands on that, you're going to get a much more authentic flavor. But just adding the yeast and the sourdough together definitely gets closer than anything else that we've had here in the States. So I'm adding 5 cups of flour, and then I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt to that. And then I'm just going to start kneading it up. Now, this is one recipe that I have found. It kind of depends on how hydrated my starter is, the humidity in the air, that sort of thing. So once I get it started kneading, I always watch it and add more water, a tablespoon or two at a time, if I see that I need it. So this is what it should look like when it's done. Everything pulled away from the sides. Everything, it's a little bit sticky. Well, I would say more it's tacky than sticky, really. But yeah, this is what you're looking for. This is what you want. So you're going to set this aside. It is not going to fully double, but I usually set it aside for about an hour. And then you can see my daughter in the background eating a loaf of sourdough that we made earlier that day. But then we are going to separate this into 3. Now you see that fancy little pan there? You don't need that. It is helpful. We have 2 of them, and I really enjoy the fact that we have 2 of them because, I don't know, it just gives you a more authentic look, but it really doesn't affect the flavor, like, at all. The biggest thing, other than the look that it does, because it has those holes in the bottom, you're able to get a really nice crust all the way around your baguette, and that is nice. But if you don't have this, obviously you can just do this on a cookie sheet too. That's fine too. So I'm going to split it into 3 fairly equal sections, and then I'm going to start rolling them out how our baker friend taught us how to roll them out. So the first thing that he showed us is that you want to kind of flatten it out a little bit, and then you're going to roll it onto itself, and then you're going to pinch that together. Just like if you're making a loaf of sourdough, at the end how you kind of pinch it together, it's kind of the same idea. And then you're going to just roll it out to the length that you want it to be. And then make sure whenever you put it on your pan that that seam is down. So I'm going to do that to all 3 of my baguettes. And then I'm going to set them aside to rise for about another hour. Once they have risen, they're going to be nice and puffy like this, and I'm just going to take my blade and I'm going to score them. Once they're scored, you want to get them in the oven fairly quickly. And so I have them baking at 425, and they're going to bake fairly quickly. And you want to make sure that whenever you're baking them, you add some ice in the bottom. That's going to steam up, and that's going to give you a nice crusty crust on your baguette. So from there, we're going to move over to Italy. Technically, this is a Greek carbonara, but you know, it's definitely a Roman pasta. So we're going to start with bacon. I have used like bacon that I've cut up, but these like bacon pieces from Sam's are just by far the easiest. And I am going to start by crisping these guys up. And then I'm going to add a good spoonful of garlic and get that kind of sauteing in that bacon grease a little bit. Be really careful here because you do not want your bacon or your garlic to burn, but you do want to get the bacon crispy and get that garlic sauteed up a little bit. I love when the bacon like jumps like that. I don't know. And then to that, I'm going to add about, I don't know, 2 cups, 3 cups of heavy cream to that. And I am going to let that kind of cook down a little bit. I'm going to add about a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese here. And I'm going to add some pepper. I do not add salt to this because the cheese is really salty and the bacon is really salty. So I don't feel like that it needs it, but it does need a nice little dose of pepper to it. So while that is going, I have my water going for some spaghetti. And this is I'm going to turn the heat down to low. I'm going to simmer it just for a little bit while that pasta is cooking. And this is going to be so fast to put together. It's literally made in the time that you boil the water and cook the pasta. So once everything is all cooked, I'm going to pull that pasta out. I'm not draining it because I am definitely going to need some of that pasta water, but I'm going to pull that spaghetti out and stick it right into my sauce. Once you get it kind of mixed around, you can see if you need to add a ladle or two of pasta water. I did add a ladle to this. It does loosen it up, but trust me, that is going to come right back together. The starches on the outside of that pasta and the starches that are in the pasta water are going to really thicken that sauce right back up and make it stick to those noodles, and that's good. So this is our Paris/Roman dinner. We have our carbonara and our baguettes. I'm gonna top it with some more Parmesan cheese because why not? And that's it. We definitely loved all three of these places, and we really, really loved the food that we got there.
So that's it, you guys. We definitely knew before we went to Greece that gyros were something that we needed to try. Of course, we've had baguettes before, and we had tried Italian carbonara. We actually tried that in Italy too. Still wasn't really my favorite. So when we discovered it in Greece, who knew that that would end up being a family favorite? So anyway, I hope you guys like that. I will happily share some more of these recipes if anybody is interested in seeing them. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching.